to the Leo Training Podcast with Joe DeLeo. You'll hear in-depth interviews and tips from world-class athletes, coaches, and industry-leading experts to help you train smarter and improve at what you love to do. Train smarter, get stronger, move better, race faster. Here's your host, Joe DeLeo.
Hi everyone, we're back with a very special episode. My guest is Derek Fitzgerald. Derek is the first Ironman finisher who is a cancer survivor and heart transplant recipient. You'll hear Derek's story of going from the operating room table to the finish line of Ironman Kona. This is a story about overcoming adversity and persevering against incredible odds. I hope you find Derek's story as inspirational as I have, and it motivates you in your current endeavors. Without further ado, here's today's episode. Derek, thank you so much for taking the time to come on to the podcast this afternoon and sharing your experiences and knowledge with everybody.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So you have an incredibly unique story, and it's very inspiring. And I'm hoping you can take some time and open things up and share your background and sort of your journey over the last several years.
Certainly. Well, grew up, normal kid, had no issues, had nothing that was hanging over my head that would force me to act any differently than any other kid out there. Went to college, started focusing on a career, stopped being active, gained a lot of weight, as I'm sure is probably the case for a lot of people out there. And I turned 30 years old, and I started feeling poorly. And ultimately, I was diagnosed with cancer. I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and went through the cancer treatments. Went through all those things that you normally hear about with cancer. Lost my hair. I actually gained weight with the steroids that they put me on. Was nauseous and had some issues there. I made it through the chemotherapy treatment and into remission, which was huge. But I had a side effect that not many people get. 3 months after I was declared in remission, I started having problems breathing. And it wasn't much longer after that it was determined that one of the drugs during my chemotherapy regimen had damaged my heart. And at that point, just 3 months out of remission, I was diagnosed with heart failure, and that I was on the verge, not quite, but on the verge of needing a heart transplant. And hopefully diet and exercise was going to be able to sustain me. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and I went for the following 7 years from that point with worsening heart failure to the point where by the mid to end of 2010, I was bedridden. I could no longer lie down because my heart wasn't strong enough to pump the fluids out of my lungs. So if I lied down, I would literally have drowned in my own bodily fluids. But I wasn't strong enough to walk around. And by January of 2011, I was practically a vegetable, where my friends would come and sit by my bedside, hold my hand and cry because I was no longer able to respond to them. I only had a few moments a day where I was coherent and able to work up enough strength to function. And then January 3rd, 2011, I received a brand new heart, or at least a heart that was new to me at the time.
Wow. That's that's an incredible experience going through there. The ups and downs that you had to go through, and so you got to that point. You received a heart transplant, and then from there, what happened?
Well, it's kind of interesting. the physical impact of a heart transplant is very similar to being hit by a truck. Um, so they break your sternum, they go in, and it's as much as you would think it, even more so, it's an invasive procedure. There's nothing quite like swapping out the engine mid-flight,
Right.
and and so they immediately put you on a cardiac and diabetic diet. I got diabetes from the high doses of steroids, of prednisone, that you put on post-transplant. And if you don't manage that within the first 3 months, then that can turn permanent. So I had to deal with the onset of diabetes um, and recover. I had atrophied. When I was originally diagnosed with cancer, I was around 200 pounds. In the months following my heart transplant, I got down to about 127, 128 pounds and was skin on bone, literally. Uh, I, I atrophied to the point where that first month of January of 2011, I didn't have enough strength to lift my head off a pillow. Uh,
Wow.
if someone pulled me up and got me onto my feet, I would walk and I would stagger. Um, I had what appeared to be edema, massive edema in both feet, because when they do a heart bypass, they fill you with fluids. And so it's fluids to the point where if you look at your foot, it starts looking like the shape of a football, like an oval, not a foot. Your ankles go away, the arch of your foot goes away, and the top of your foot just kind of inflates up.
Right. So there's a lot of swelling.
There's a lot of swelling, and you have to work that out through walking. You have to work that out through going to the bathroom and sweating. Um, and so I I was so appreciative to be alive and so appreciative to have yet another chance at life. I didn't know what I was going to do to to celebrate being alive, but I knew that I wanted to try and give back in some way. So um, I would sit there. I would lie in my bed actually, and I would just try and lift my head from my pillow, and that's how I started training, just an inch at a time. I'd lift it an inch, and then I'd drop it back, and lift another inch, and then I'd drop it back. And then, I started getting, bed sores and all those things that you would expect after an extended period of time in bed. And so I would start to clench my butt cheeks and unclench and just try and work some muscle until the point where no one was around and I couldn't get out of bed by myself. So I would use my butt cheeks to wiggle my body off the edge of the bed. I'd fall to the floor. Luckily, it was a low bed.
Hmm.
And I would crawl from one side of my bedroom and back. And that's the next step of training. And through all these things, I was just like, man, this is amazing. I never thought I'd be here to do this. And here I am alive. And, first I couldn't lift my head from a pillow. And then I lifted the head from the pillow. And then I couldn't walk on my own. I couldn't stand on my own. Um, and I couldn't get out of bed on my own. But then, over time, over those first several weeks of post-transplant, I would crawl until I hit a wall, and then I would push my body up, literally push my face and use my chin to try and help drag myself upright until I could stagger to my feet, a la, you know, the end of Rocky 1 and 2, hanging onto any rope that would keep me upright. And I would stagger around and try to work the muscles to learn how to walk again. Um, and that's where I started.
So you were building from the ground up, just like a newborn baby.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. So just listening to that, I mean, that's certainly given me the last few minutes, a much greater perspective and appreciation for sort of some of the daily activities that I may take for granted.
It's,
So,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you get to the point where you really understand how much you have taken for granted. And so many athletes, I think, or people in general, when they go through any kind of injury, where they can't be as active or as mobile or as strong as they once were at one time, the mind is the greatest hurdle to get over. Because the mind will play tricks on you like, man, I should be able to do this. I used to be able to do this one thing on my own. I used to be able to jump higher. I used to be able to run further. And now I can't do that. And overcoming something like a heart transplant or cancer is all about adapting to your situation. And, for the first 3 months since your sternum is broken, they don't want you lifting anything heavier than a gallon of milk. Bending over, standing up is all difficult. So you learn to do more things with your feet. You learn to do more things with your knees. You learn to balance differently. And all of those things are good. But, as a trainer yourself, you're probably more than well aware that the fact that when muscle groups shut down and they don't have the strength, they compensate by becoming rigid and inflexible. So,
Right.
unfortunately, I had to go through a whole phase of adapting to a new body, but it really did not prepare me for anything that I wanted to do athletic beyond that point. So, it
Yeah. So from there, you're kind of figuring out how to move in your new body, so to speak, and kind of getting your bearings again, and that takes several months, as you said, and then you're starting to take quite literally steps towards moving more and moving better, and eventually you take that and move towards doing some triathlon. How did you go from that point of just being able to get around daily, just do the normal daily functions, to saying, okay, this is something I want to pursue. I want to do a triathlon, and why?
right. Well, I had never been active prior. I mean, I played soccer in high school. I was in the marching band. I did all that, but my friends would go out on the weekends and do a 5K, and I had no idea what the hell they were talking about. Um, and so I was trying to. I was going through cardiac rehab, and from at rehab they got me from a little old man stagger, hunched over, to a very very slow walk, to a very slow jog, and it was one of those things in cardiac rehab. I started jogging, and granted, I mean, you probably wouldn't consider it a jog, but for me, I was doing intervals of, you know, 10-minute intervals, and I would do 9 minutes and 50 seconds of walking and 10 seconds of jogging slowly. And for those 10 seconds, I was like, woohoo, this is great.
Right.
And it took a long time, and finally one day I was at rehab, and I'm on the treadmill, and my feet just got light, and they started moving faster, and my chest expanded and lifted up, and my shoulders moved back, my chin came up, and I went from 10 seconds of jogging to a minute and a half of jogging, and in that minute and a half of jogging, I had a runner's high. I mean, that was the only thing I could describe it as, and with that runner's high came these flood of memories of what it felt like to feel healthy and to be healthy, and I had forgotten all of that. I had just forgotten what it felt like to be able to breathe and move and be active. And I knew at that point that I wanted to do something more. So I started running all the time, and jogging and training and stretching. And 8 months post heart transplant, I ran my very first 5K.
Awesome, man. That's outstanding.
2 months after that, I ran my first half marathon, and found a way to give back through team and training to raise money to help fight cancer. And that was November. That was a Philly marathon. I did the half in November of 2011. And then I said, you know what? This is fun. This feels great. I want to keep kicking the tire and see what this new heart will do. And so I said, maybe I should try a triathlon. And so in January of 2012, I started training with Team and Training again, and started training for an Olympic distance triathlon. That was in April in Florida of 2012. I did that. And then in May of 2012, 1 month later, I went back down to Florida and I did my first half iron. So the whole triathlon thing and the whole exercise thing in general was a straight up learning curve. I won't say I was enjoying it because it hurt. It all hurt. And when I ran, I would have to go for at least 5 miles before everything stopped hurting. And it was just an experience. I didn't mind punishing myself a little bit because it felt like I was making the most of this heart. And quite honestly, the most heart transplants will gain 100 pounds in the first year.
Oh, wow.
After their heart.
I had no idea.
And the heart that they choose for you is based upon the body size that you're at the heart transplant. So the additional weight is not good for you. I mean, it's not good for anybody, but especially when you've got a heart that was selected for a specific body size and then you gain 100 pounds. It causes a lot of problems. I was able to get rid of, with the exercise that I was doing, I was able to get rid of the diabetes within 3 months, kick that to the curb. And then I was able to maintain a healthy body weight. I got to 160, 165 pounds, which is healthy for me. And they also tell you that one of the hurdles that you have to cross as a heart transplant is that you're completely denervated, denerved. You don't see a hill, start running it, and your heart doesn't start beating faster to accommodate that additional output automatically. It has to take different cues. It has to go through adrenaline and all these other things. And they tell you that you're not likely to get nerve regeneration. If you do, it won't likely be for at least 5 years out. I started regenerating nerves to this new heart within the first year. And my doctors can only attribute that to the level of physical activity that I was putting myself through and challenging this heart to adapt to this body and vice versa. And so it's been one of my goals is to keep as physically fit as I can, to exercise and eat well, because I'm a custodian of this heart. And the better I treat this vessel, this body, the better chances I have for survival, the better I feel that I'm honoring the gift that I've been given by this unknown hero, that's kept me alive now 5 years longer than I was supposed to be.
Wow, that's truly inspiring and incredible, and just the continued hurdles that you've overcome, from cancer to the diabetes after the heart transplant, and then regaining your ability to move well, and then overcoming sort of all the post-operation effects of the heart transplant. I mean, it's one after another, and you just sort of keep I guess dispelling the statistics is a good way to think of that. You're not becoming a number in a negative sense. You're not an anomaly in a good way.
Yeah, and speaking of numbers, I mean, I've done the research, and the number 2 killer during my my health experiences, according to the CDC's statistics, the number 2 killer in the United States is cancer during the years of 2000, what was it, 2003 to 2011. And the number one killer throughout that same period was heart disease. Those two diseases combined killed just under 11 million people in the US alone. And the fact that I'm still here at all, doing anything, just being topside and breathing, is a significant achievement that my doctors have done, and I'm so fortunate to have so many great people that have taken care of me, healthcare providers along the way. But beyond that, going through all these things, these doctors and professionals and miracle workers, they didn't make, I can't say that they made me, that they made me as good as new. They made me better than I've ever been in my entire life. Now I train 7 days a week. And I went from that half iron in May of 2012 to jump back into that timeline. I went back home, I competed in the transplant games, and then I did that same Philadelphia marathon, but I did the full marathon that year. And I went up to Lake Placid in 2012 because I'd been, riding my bike and starting to hang with triathlete friends. And I volunteered at Lake Placid in 2012. And they said, listen, Derek, you have to sit there in Lake Placid. You have to, 11 o'clock, you have to sit on the hill at the school and watch the finish line. It's called Inspiration Hour, and you're going to love it because it will change your life. And it did. I sat there and I watched these people cross, and the music was, the techno music was pounding, through my chest, and people are just cheering and clapping and stomping their feet and cheering on these individuals that were crossing and doing this Ironman in 16 hours and X amount of minutes, all the way up to midnight that night. And I was so inspired that right there, 12:01 that morning, I called my coach. I didn't care that it was midnight. I called my coach and I said, Coach, we're doing this. And at the time I knew that one other cancer survivor / heart transplant recipient had attempted an Ironman, full Ironman distance. And I know he had tried it twice, and I knew that he had not been able to finish. But that man had inspired me. And the people of Ironman Lake Placid 2012, Inspiration Hour, had inspired me. And I knew I wanted to give it a shot. And I knew I wanted to be the first person to carry my donor's heart 140.6 total miles, just to honor this person. And so that's what I did. He called me back the next day. He didn't answer the phone at midnight. And he said, all right, Derek, I'm in. Let's do this. And I got to hand it to him because he built a plan. I followed it religiously, training with him and a strength coach. And I've been working with these two guys, Todd Wiley and Fernando Paredes. And they have taken this beat up old jalopy of a body and prepared me. They prepared me to finish that Ironman, which I did in July of 2013. And then 4 months after that, I went and did Ironman Lake Placid. So my first attempt at Ironman, I did 2 of them within 4 months in 2013, along with doing several century rides and marathons and putting it all together. So it's been something that I've used to change my body. I've used it to change my whole mindset, my whole way of thinking. I've used it to change my diet and my nutrition. And it's allowed me a life, a higher quality of life than I could have ever hoped for, prayed for, you name it. It's just beyond the number of times that I have to go back and see my doctors. They had originally told me that I'd be going back for visits for up to 5 years. Well, I cut that down to 2 years, just because I was so healthy and active, and the exercise that I was doing and the activity was helping my heart. I started off the heart transplant with over 40 medications a day at extremely high dosages. I'm now down to 9 pills a day at extremely low dosages, so the side effects are minimal. The long-term side effects of those drugs, immunosuppressants, have long-term implications to your kidneys, to your liver, to all the other things. And so I'm down at low dosages, so that all of these things just bode really, really well for a higher quality of life and less long-term side effects. And I, not only do I owe it to the healthcare community, but I owe it to my coaches and the endurance community. And over the past 5 years since the heart transplant, 4 years of being active, I've probably done close to 80 different endurance events now. I've done 4 full Ironman triathlons. I've crossed I've crossed the country on my bicycle, going from Santa Monica, California, to Avalon, New Jersey, and that was this past year. 3 weeks after I finished that bike ride, I went up to Canada, did Ironman Mont Tremblant, and then after that, less than, I guess, 2 months after that, I went out to Kona and I competed in the Ironman World Championship. And the debt that I owe these people, the debt that I owe this anonymous donor, is huge. Because no matter what all of those things have done for me personally, and the satisfaction that I've gained from these accomplishments, they pale in comparison to the fact that I'm now a father, and I have a 2-year-old girl running around calling me daddy, and we had been trying to have a kid for at least 12 years unsuccessfully, and then I get the heart transplant. I'm still alive. I'm active, and then boom, we have a kid.
Wow.
So
that's awesome. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
That's so you've gone through this incredible transformation, right? And exercise has quite literally saved your life. You sort of have gone through and explained that by continuing to exercise, that you're continuing to decrease the amount of medications that you need.
Absolutely.
And is there? Do they think there might be a point in time where you don't need them at all?
No. Just like a cold, your body fights foreign elements within the system. So, in order for my body to not fight this foreign organ, the heart, in my chest, I'm going to need to stay on immunosuppressants for the rest of my life. There are some new therapies that are coming around with stem cell research and things that they're calling ghost organs, where they're actually taking your own DNA, your own stem cells, and creating 3D printing organs.
Very cool.
That they can then put back into your body that you do not require immunosuppressants for, because it is your living tissue that they're implanting inside you. That's not here yet for hearts yet, for a little complex, more of a complex organism or organ, but it's getting there. And hearts in general, no one knows how long they'll last once you get a transplant. So it could be a day, it could be a year, I think the world record holder for longest living heart transplant recipient just died the other day. He was just over 30 years out, post-heart transplant. So I'm 43 now. I was transplanted at 38. So who knows? Maybe I can go 30 years. Maybe in 30 years' time, that technology will have advanced and science will have advanced to the point where I can get my own heart grown outside of me and then implanted in me, and I won't have to worry about immunosuppressants and the things that I need to adapt to now at this point. But we'll see. Is that a bad thing? No. I mean, some people would say, well, geez, you could go at any time. And, how do you live that way? I'm like, no offense, but so could you. There is nothing that makes us different in that regard at this point. The only difference is that I've been shown my own mortality several times. And I won't say that people don't value it, but I so appreciate this opportunity to walk around and do these things and be a father and just go out for a run or a bike ride or a swim because I know what it's like to be trapped in your own body and slowly dying in a hospital room. And so I don't take it for granted. One of the things I heard when I went to my first transplant games, they had some transplant recipients speaking as keynote speakers, and they said something that stuck with me, and that, how do we as transplant recipients honor these people that died and chose to share their organs with us to keep us alive? Or of course, there's living donors as well, but for me, someone died and I received their heart. And how do I honor that person? And the answer is fairly simple, is that you live like your donor is watching. And you live in such a way that would try and make that person proud. And, the whole donor process itself is set up like a closed adoption. You don't know whose heart you're getting. And the donor family doesn't know whose heart where their heart, their family member's heart is going to. You can write letters, and it goes through intermediaries, social workers, and they black out any personally identifiable information. But then they get it to, they get the correspondence back and forth. And I wrote a letter 6 months out to my donor family to thank them for my life, and thanking them for choosing to honor the wishes of their loved one and allowing those organs to be donated. And I know that my donor family received the letter, but for whatever purpose, for whatever reason, I can certainly understand, but they chose not to write back. So I'll never know unless they choose to write back and say, hey, would you like to meet someday? Which is possible after an extended period of correspondence. Unless they choose to do that, I'll never know who my donor was or who my donor family is. So people ask me what I do know, and I don't know the sex of this person. I don't know the age of this person. I don't know their name. What I do know is that on the last day of their life, probably the worst day of their life, this person chose to save the life of a complete stranger. And to me, that speaks to a level of generosity and compassion and honor and integrity and all these wonderful characteristics that I take now. And that is the bar. That is the measuring stick. That is what I try to live up to every day, like that person is watching me.
Yeah, you are certainly doing that, my friend. It's awesome to hear you share your experiences and your journey, and you are certainly making the use of that heart quite well.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. So let's kind of shift gears a little bit, and let's talk kind of get into a little bit more specifics, what are some of the things that you had to do specifically to kind of retrain, regain your movement? I know you talked about, in bed you were picking your head up, right? And then
Right.
crawling. But then, going from that point to being able to do a 5K, but then do a multidisciplinary sport like triathlon, which is multiple hours as you get up into the half Ironman distance and full Ironman. I mean, what are some of the things that you had to do in strength training and then also with your endurance training?
Well, when I first started, it was just putting on sneakers and just going out and running or doing intervals. That walk for 9 minutes and 50 seconds, jog for 10 seconds interval worked well for a period of time, and until the point where I got out and I started training. I started training with Team in Training, and I had a list every day. Here's what I have to do. I didn't know the difference between a 5K or 5 miles. And so the first day they said, all right, we'll go out and do a 5K if you can. And I was all gung ho about it. I was like, fantastic. I set my phone. I had a little app on there to measure my distance. I had set it to miles. I didn't know the difference. I didn't have compression shorts. I had just standard Converse sneakers and cotton socks. I didn't have any moisture wicking shirts. And so at 5 miles, I was slogging away, trying to get these miles in. And I thought, man, my thighs really burn. And then I took a shower afterwards, and then they just lit on fire, and they were a little bloody. And that was my first experience with understanding the needs of was it the glide stick, but
right.
Little lubrication and some compression gear, and wearing the right shoes, sneakers, and really that's where it started. I've had some amazing coaches that have taken me under their wing and shown me the way. But in terms of my body, I had a breakdown in communication, between the left and the right side, from the top half of my core to the bottom half. Nothing was talking to each other. And so, I went to a functional core strength training workshop, and they do the FMS evaluation, and I was just off the charts bad. The coordination of a rock and a little less flexibility than that, and literally, Fernando, my strength coach, took me from step one. He said, nothing's talking to each other, and we've got to figure out a way to get, the right side to talk to the left side and vice versa, and started putting me through functional strength training movements and getting my core to work again, to understand, because the cancer I had, they cut a tumor out of my intestine that was about the size of a small grapefruit. That cut from just above my belly button to just below my waistline. The heart transplant cut from the base of my neck down to the top of the scar from my tumor removal. So literally, I had everything sliced open from the base of my neck to just below my waistline. Everything severed. Every muscle group it stopped talking. And so some basic, lie on your back and try to spin your legs, spin your feet in a bicycle-like motion. It was just a lot of concentration, a lot of work to be able to do that. All right, now do it one-legged. All right, stop that and do the other leg. All right, now do it in reverse, both legs. And every time it was just retraining my mind, retraining my muscles, trying to get everything to speak to the other one, to be able to lie on my back and lift my legs, just a basic leg lift, and get my core to work, not my lower back, or not, my, you know, my hamstrings or whatever. Everything was firing in the wrong spot, and everything was compensating for weak muscles and things that had just frozen over time. Basic stretches. I'm still working on touching my toes, but I'm getting there. I'm getting a little bit more limber every day, and I don't do a lot of the same races, but I do one race in particular. I do the Philadelphia Marathon or triathlon. I try to do the Philly Tri every year, or Tri Rock Philly now, and it's just a baseline for me. And I've noticed every year that in core strength training and the overall strength that I've been receiving and the coaching from Todd and Fernando, I've able to go from basically I PR by a half an hour every year, and I've done it for 3 years in a row. So my fourth year, I'm hoping for yet another PR. I know that I can't keep having half-hour PRs.
That's awesome, though.
At some point, there is a limiting factor, and I start passing, the lead triathlete in the race, and that just gets awkward. So, I don't expect that to ever happen, but I'm at least racing now with my friends. I'm not the very last person on the course. Now I'm middle to back of pack, maybe even middle of pack in these things on a good day. But, I just keep plugging away. I listen to what people who are smarter than me and more experienced than me tell me. And I just keep moving forward.
That's awesome, man. But better is better, right? And so each year you come back and you are getting better, and that's what it's about.
Absolutely.
Winning sometimes is not the end all be all, and we're very sort of infatuated with that in today's society. It's lifting the most weight or becoming putting the ribbon around our neck or a gold medal, and those are definitely worthwhile pursuits, but sometimes it's just continuing self-improvement and having the appreciation and gratitude for life and being able to move. And you definitely have encapsulated that very well.
Well, thank you. No, I definitely when things get tough out on the course, and whether you're an elite athlete or a first timer, things are going to get rough, and it's the mental fortitude and strength and stamina to be able to keep moving forward. And during those times, I just think back. I look at where I'm at and I'm thinking, man, this sucks today. But I think back to laying in bed and before the transplant, not being able to move, not being able to speak. Right after the transplant, not even being able to lift my head from a pillow. And there I am after 16 hours of torturing myself. I'm just thankful to be able to do it. And I did Kona in this past October, and their theme for that year's race was Onipa'a, which means consistent and steady motion and movement forward. I had a lot of problems on the swim. I probably took in too much salt, drank too much salt water. I started, the winds and the heat got to me. My hamstring started cramping on the bike. So I was doing a lot of one-legged spin drills on the bike over that 112 miles. And my mantra, the thing that I kept repeating that whole race was Onipa'a, Onipa'a. Just keep constantly moving forward. Forward is a speed. And I think I made the bike cutoff with 3 minutes to spare, my slowest bike time in an Ironman ever. But I was like, well, if they're not smart enough to stop me now, I'm not going to stop myself. I'm just going to keep going. And I finished that race with under 10 minutes to spare for the cutoff, but I finished, and it was a huge accomplishment for me, and it was, I was honored to be there and to be competing next to the best in the world. And then there was me, and a completely different aspect. But yeah, I think I'm definitely taking Onipa'a and making it my own.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that phrase, and that's so cool that anytime you hit those tough points in the races, you kind of went back to that and just sort of in your mind said that phrase over and over, and just kept moving forward. And like you said, forward is a speed, and that's awesome. That's incredible. And that sounds like, would it be accurate to say that was probably one of your more challenging races? Just, it sounds like you had some cramps and tightness through the hamstrings, and just, yeah, you were fighting, all the way through for that one.
It was a long day, obviously, but I had just finished Mont Tremblant a couple months prior, and then the ride across the country, and I injured myself in the ride across the country. It had been a long year of training. Plus, I'd done other races throughout, so it was all for charity. I knew I wasn't going out there for my personal best. I was doing it to prove to myself that I could do it.
Right, and sometimes that's all you need to do, and that's the most important thing. It's doing it for ourselves.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's kind of move to some of the rapid fire questions. We're kind of closing in on an hour now.
Okay.
We'll have some fun here. So, what advice would you give yourself if you could meet yourself 10 years ago? So, all your knowledge and experience presently, you go back and talk to Derek 10 years ago. What would you say to him?
Take care of my body better. When I was diagnosed, well, I'm 11 years out now from my cancer diagnosis, and it was very difficult. So I'll take your question. I'll push it back 15 years, where I was working all day, sitting on my butt with a laptop in my lap, going home from work late at night, stopping at a drive-through, Mickey D's, picking up a triple cheese or a double cheese burger, and not exercising, not taking care of myself. There is a lot to be said in eating right and exercise, because it's basically investing in yourself. And it's tough to go wrong when you invest the time and the effort and the energy in yourself. You just feel better.
Yeah, I love that. I've never heard that before, but that's great. You are investing in yourself. It's like what you put into your body, and then the exercise you do. I mean, that's a direct reflection of how well you're going to move, how you feel, your health, your longevity and stuff. So that's wonderful, wonderful advice. So do you have a favorite either training session type workout or a favorite strength training exercise that's a staple that you enjoy?
No, I hate all of it. I hate all of it. It hurts. I don't like doing it. But no, and I'm completely serious. I hate all of it. What I like is how I feel after the fact. What I like is how it's changed my life. And it takes work. It takes that effort. And like I said, it's an investment. Those investments, those small victories over time, they add up. And I don't go out there and try and win. I just try and be a little bit better than I was the day before. And so that, to me, that's why I do what I do, even if I don't like, paying the price of sore muscles or spending 6 hours on a bike somewhere going up hills.
Right. No, that's awesome, man. I mean, that's what it's about, right? It's the enjoyment after the fact.
Yeah.
Very cool. So if there's anybody starting out, or maybe trying to make a change, what advice, would you give them?
Anybody starting out, I would have very little expectations. Don't go out there thinking that you're going to win something. Again, like similar to what I just said, take an honest assessment of where you are and try and be a little bit better than where you are now tomorrow. Be better than you were yesterday and enjoy it. Find a buddy or a couple buddies that you can spend this time with, because misery loves company. And there are no friendships out there like the friendships you establish on, mile 12 of a run, or mile 30 of a bike ride. It Whether you've just met somebody for the first time that day, or you've known each other for years, you always learn something new, and it makes maybe not the maybe it's not fun to think about pushing yourself 30 miles on a bicycle right now. Maybe you're not at that point, but going out and having an enjoyable afternoon, talking with a friend, and going out to grab a nice healthy bite to eat after, and enjoying being outside and looking at the scenery around you and enjoying life. I mean, that's what it's all about. So forget about place, forget about where you think you should be. Just go out there and enjoy yourself, and try and make those small improvements every day, and celebrate every time you reach those little tiny milestones.
That's great. That's wonderful. What is one book everyone should read?
One book everyone should read. Okay, I am going to shamelessly plug my friend, fellow cancer survivor, heart transplant recipient, and triathlete, and his name is Kyle Garlett. The name of the book is Heart of Iron, and it is the story of his real life journey through his health obstacles to compete in the World Championship of Ironman in Kona, Hawaii. Fantastic writer, fantastic book. It inspired me to get to where I needed to be, and it would inspire anyone out there. So go get Kyle's book.
Cool. Thank you. Well, I'll definitely post a link to that in the show notes so everyone can check that out. Now you've mentioned, we'll wrap up, but you've mentioned several times, your work with charity and stuff. So why don't we kind of give you the mic back, and you can talk a little bit about that and your work with that, and explain so people can learn a little bit more about it.
Certainly. I've been very fortunate to deal with some amazing organizations, and some amazing organizations that have been raising money a long time to help people like me. And so obviously Team in Training, which is the charitable endurance fundraising arm of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. So teamintraining.org is where you can find out more information about them. They do runs, cycle events, triathlons, hikes, stair climbs up tallest buildings in your area. They've got one coming up in Philadelphia. They've got them all over the country. And they do a lot of fundraising for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. The American Heart Association, another organization that I go out there and will stand on my soapbox for, and the research that they do to help raise awareness for heart disease and find new treatments and therapies to help with that. Donate Life, and in Philadelphia specifically, Gift of Life. Organ procurement, if I can say that right, procurement organizations all over the country that help match people that need organs and the people that provide the organs. So I go out there and I do a lot on their behalf. I work with the Headstrong Foundation, an amazing organization based in the Philadelphia area that provides housing for people undergoing cancer treatment and therapy in the Philadelphia area. And what they do is phenomenal. It's based around the Kalalori family, and they lost Nick Kalalori to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And Nick, before he passed, started the Headstrong Foundation. They're very entrenched with the lacrosse community. So if you see the lime green out there on the lacrosse gear, that's Headstrong. They're working to help improve the quality of life of cancer patients. So headstrong.org. I work with Dragonfly Heart Camp, and that is all about taking kids who have either had heart transplants or who have pulmonary hypertension, most of whom have had these issues congenitally, so since birth, have never been outside their hospital, away from their parents. It takes them and puts them in an outdoor camp environment for a week during the summer months. And all of the camp counselors, quote unquote camp counselors, are staffed through Johns Hopkins, through CHOP here in Philadelphia. And so they make sure that they take their immunosuppressants. They make sure that, they're well cared for medically, but they're going out and they're climbing rock walls. They're zip lining. They're going out and swimming in the bay or going on boating trips. They're telling stories around the fire, and they're doing things that kids should be doing. It's a great organization. I'm happy to work with those guys. So Dragonfly Heart Camp is that. And quite honestly, I've started my own foundation now, the Recycled Man Foundation, to help raise money and awareness, to help fight cancer, to help raise awareness for heart disease and heart health, and also to raise awareness for organ donation and organ transplantation. So Recycled Man Foundation.
Derek, awesome. They all sound like fantastic organizations to work with. Like I said, I'll be sure to include a link to each of those in the show notes so that everyone can take some time to check them out. And thank you so much for coming on. I just ask you to stay on the line, and I'll give you a proper goodbye, and we'll wrap up.
Sounds good. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for listening to the Leo Training Podcast. Subscribe and get even more expert training tips at www.leotraining.io.